What if the world you remember isn't wrong, just outdated? What if your memories weren't erased, but quietly replaced with a newer, cleaner version? We're taught that memory is fragile, that the mind lies, that stress, time, and emotion distort what we remember. And that explanation is comforting, because if memory is unreliable, then the problem is you. But if your memories are correct, and the world changed instead, then something else is in control. This is not a philosophical question. This is not a theory. This is a documented correction event. And it begins with a man who noticed the update. This is the case file of Subject 05. The man who remembered the world wrong. At first he did what most people do when something feels off. He ignored it. He told himself that memory is unreliable, that the brain fills in gaps, that confidence doesn't mean accuracy, because that explanation is safe. It creates a sense of stability, a feeling that the world is still familiar. And then the first glitch appeared. It was small, easy to dismiss. A childhood photograph. He remembered standing on the left side of the frame, not vaguely, not emotionally, precisely. He remembered the angle of his shoulders, the way the light hit his face, the reason he chose that spot. But in the photograph, he was standing on the right. His mother didn't hesitate. She said it had always been that way. No uncertainty, no doubt. That should have been reassuring. Instead, it felt wrong. Because people hesitate when they're unsure. Certainty without hesitation feels rehearsed. The second glitch came the next day. He watched an old video of himself from college. A presentation he remembered practicing for weeks. He knew every sentence. But when the video played, his voice didn't sound like his own. It wasn't distorted, it wasn't damaged, it was flatter, deeper, like a reconstruction, as if someone had rebuilt it based on a description instead of a recording. He blamed compression, old equipment, low quality audio, and then he noticed a scar, 4 centimeters long, clean, surgical. He had no memory of it, no accident, no injury, no explanation. He asked friends. No one remembered anything unusual. That was the pattern. Every inconsistency was small enough to ignore. And every explanation made sense, but taken together they formed something else. A quiet question. What if the problem wasn't his memory at all? What if the problem was that the world remembered him differently? At some point, ignoring the inconsistencies stopped working, not because they became dramatic, but because they became consistent. Each difference was small, defensible, easy to explain away. Yet together they formed a pattern that followed him. He started noticing changes in places he knew by routine. A bookstore he visited for years had rearranged its interior. Not recently, not temporarily. According to the staff, it had always been that way. A cafe he passed every morning opened its door on the opposite side of the building. No renovation records, no memory of construction, just certainty. Conversations began to feel unstable. Discussions he remembered clearly were dismissed as misunderstandings. Details he recalled precisely were corrected by people who showed no hesitation. Confidence like that was unsettling. Because doubt looks human. Certainty without pause feels programmed. He stopped trusting coincidence. Instead, he started tracking repetition. The same types of changes, the same scale, the same quiet corrections. Every anomaly stayed within limits. Nothing that would cause panic. Nothing that would attract attention. just enough to maintain alignment. That realization changed his behavior. He began retracing his steps, revisiting places he hadn't questioned before, checking photographs, replaying recordings, searching for reference points that could anchor him to something solid. Instead, the opposite happened. The more he checked, the more unstable everything felt. Familiar environments started to feel artificial, like sets, carefully arranged. Even silence changed. Rooms felt quieter than they should have been. Streets felt emptier than memory suggested. He began to wonder whether the world was correcting itself or correcting him. Sleep became unreliable. Dreams repeated, not symbolically. Their structure stayed the same layout, the same corridors, the same ending. Waking up no longer brought relief. It only confirmed that the pattern was still there. The discovery wasn't sudden. It came from frustration, from the need to prove that at least one thing was still consistent. He returned to his old laptop, a machine he hadn't used in years. It ran slowly. It struggled to boot, which made it feel safe. Outdated systems don't update quietly. While searching through old backups, he found a folder he didn't remember creating. The name wasn't descriptive, just a date, November 23rd, 2025. Inside were files with unfamiliar extensions, short clips, audio fragments, system logs. One file stood out, correctionlog.txt. The contents were minimal. No explanation, no header, no author, just entries, time-stamped, sequential, precise. Each line described a small adjustment, not deletions, replacements, environmental alignment, memory synchronization, localized correction. The language was technical, indifferent, as if written for a system, not a person. One entry referenced subject 05, another referenced observer load. That line repeated, load increasing, coolant levels unstable, subject alignment in progress. He scrolled faster. The timestamps didn't spread across days. They clustered. All entries occurred within the same hour, and they all ended the same way. Patch 05 completed. That was when he stopped reading, because the realization arrived quietly. The changes weren't random. They weren't errors. They were maintenance. He didn't open the file immediately. Some part of him already knew it wasn't meant to be watched. The file name was generic. No description, no date, no warning. Just a label. Patch 05.mp4. The video began without sound. A static frame, an empty room, no movement, no people. For several seconds nothing happened, then the audio started, a low-frequency hum, mechanical, repetitive, not loud, persistent. Text appeared on the screen. Memory misalignment detected, subject reference confirmed, correction sequence initialized. The room shifted, not visually, spatially. As if the camera wasn't recording space, but recalculating it. The hum intensified. Another line appeared. Environmental parameters locked. Observer load increasing, coolant levels unstable, alignment in progress, the image distorted, frames overlapped, moments repeated, not as glitches, as corrections, faces appeared for fractions of a second, incomplete, unfinished. Then the final message, patch sequence completed. Subject status updated. The video ended. No sound, no fade, just silence. He sat still, because one thing was suddenly clear. That video wasn't documenting a change, it was performing one. He shut the laptop down, not out of panic, out of instinct. Machines reset, people do too. After the restart, the room felt normal again. The air was still. The lights behaved as expected. Familiar sounds returned. Traffic in the distance, a clock marking time. Nothing appeared wrong. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't. Because normal can be restored. Normal can be simulated. He turned the laptop back on. Most of the files were gone. The folder dated November 23rd no longer existed. Backup showed nothing unusual. System logs were clean. Almost clean. One file remained. Observer.txt. It was small. Plain text. No formatting. The contents were brief. Not explanatory, not reassuring. Observer active. Subject stabilized. Load parameters recalculated. Environmental sync pending. The final line was different, less technical, almost personal. Observation continuing. He stared at the screen. That line was different. It wasn't describing a process. It described a condition. Something ongoing. Something present. He closed the file. Not because he understood it, but because he didn't. The room stayed quiet. Too quiet. As if it was waiting for the next instruction. After that night, nothing dramatic happened. No alarms appeared. No warnings followed. No visible changes occurred. Days passed. Routines returned. The world behaved exactly as expected. That was the problem. Systems do not correct only once. Monitoring follows. He stopped searching for glitches. Attention shifted to consistency. Patterns in repetition. Patterns in absence. Certain details never surfaced again. Old memories stopped emerging. Specific places felt inaccessible. Not physically, cognitively. It felt as if the system had narrowed the range of his available history. Conversations became simpler. Topics avoided themselves. Questions dissolved before they fully formed. The world did not feel broken. It felt optimized. Efficiency replaced friction. Outcomes arrived faster. Choices narrowed quietly. Nothing felt forced. Nothing felt artificial. The system no longer required resistance. Weeks later, a message appeared. Not on a screen, not on a device. During a moment of silence, a sentence that did not resemble a thought. It did not feel like memory. It felt like information. Observation remains active. No instruction followed, no explanation arrived. The message did not request action. Compliance was implied. That was when he understood what Subject 05 actually represented. It was not an identifier, it was a status. Confirmation that the correction held. Confirmation that alignment succeeded. Somewhere, a system recorded stability. Elsewhere, coolant levels adjusted. Observer load balanced. No further intervention required. Without any notification, the case file ended. Not because it was resolved, because it no longer required attention. If you have ever remembered something no one else remembers the same way, if you have ever felt that the past did not quite match the present you woke up in, the system has an explanation. You were corrected. Updates do not announce themselves. They propagate quietly, seamlessly, until nothing feels wrong anymore. Observation continues.